Hello, welcome back to Journal Entries. Have you ever been in bed at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and you're like, let me just check my email real quick before bed? Or maybe you wake up at 6 a.m. or whatever time your alarm goes off, and your first thought is, I should check my email or check in on this project before I get started with my day. Or maybe if part of your work is being on social media, you are constantly refreshing your social media platforms to see what the engagement is like. Today, we are talking about how being the go getter, the overachiever in your career might actually be holding you back in ways that you don't realize. When I was a health and wellness coach, I was addicted, obsessed with my phone. I was on it 24/7, whether I was checking emails or checking DMs on Instagram and Facebook. I was always wanting to hit the next goal in my business as well. I was never satisfied with the number of clients that I had, the milestone that I reached in my business, no matter how much money that I earned or the status that I had within the company. I was always challenging myself, which felt like it was a good quality to have. But if I was being honest with myself, it was draining not just me, but also my relationships. In this episode, you're going to learn the signs of overachieving and how it becomes self sabotage. You'll also learn the real impact that it's having on your career and your relationships. And what you're all here for now is exactly how to break free from that pattern. The hyperachiever is a self sabotage pattern, and it's one of the 10 that we all have as human beings. These are instilled in us from when we were younger, from when we were children, because hyperachieving kept us safe. Whether that be because working hard meant that our parents were proud of us and therefore we felt loved, or so many other reasons. The actual definition is dependent on constant performance and achievement for self respect and self validation. The hyperachiever is focused on external validation, which is attention and acceptance from others, and it leads to unsustainable workaholic tendencies and loss of touch with your deeper emotional needs and your relationship needs. Lots of times, workaholics feel burnt out because they lose touch with themselves and their desires. There is a self sabotage quiz that you can take where it ranks you on all 10 sabotage patterns. So I will include that link in the show notes. The hyperachiever is my number 3. When I discovered that, I was a little bit shocked because I definitely can relate to the hyperachiever. As I just said, I used to definitely embody all qualities of the hyperachiever. But when I saw that it was number 3, I thought, I have worked so hard on this and I truly don't feel like I'm a hyperachiever anymore. I have so much more balance in my life and calm in my life, and I don't push nearly as hard. I used to hustle, 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 and now I'm the opposite of that. I enjoy resting guilt free. And so, because of this, I was like, let me take the test again. And it struck me after I answered all of the questions that that is probably a hyperachiever thing to do, is to retake the same exact test just to see if a different result would come up. So I just kind of laughed at myself when I was like, okay, maybe I do still have a little bit of this in myself. I was definitely a hyperachiever and actually would have even called myself a workaholic. That's when I was constantly available to my clients as a health and wellness coach. I was checking DMs and emails constantly, like I said earlier, and just checking for new questions that would come up and maybe new client signups and just wanting to be available, which is also a hint of people pleasing, which is another sabotage pattern, my number 1. It also looked like refreshing my Instagram feed to see how many likes I got, if anybody commented, if anybody shared my post. Even if I thought I was posting something that was funny or relatable, I would refresh constantly to see if other people thought it was funny and other people thought it was relatable. And the impact that it had on me was draining. I was always doing this. And even though it felt fun and exciting because I was passionate about what I was doing, underneath it all, I was exhausted. I was glued to my phone, and it was actually impacting my relationship at the time as well. I remember almost every single night being on the couch watching TV during our family time, and my ex-husband would ask me, "What are you doing on your phone?" And I would always justify it as, "Oh, I'm just doing something for work real quick." But it didn't feel good. I also had this immense guilt despite loving what I do. Even though I love it so much, should I really be working after hours? Should I really be taking on all of these opportunities and all of these clients instead of really serving the ones that I already have? And then there was also the false belief that more clients and more sales and just checking in more frequently would mean less phone time. Like, if I just had X number of clients or earned X amount of money, no matter how much I earned, somehow that benchmark would mean that's when I could log off my phone. That's when I won't be glued to social media. But as you can probably assume, that never happened. This might be showing up for you in a similar way that I just explained, but it also might show up in the ways that I see with my clients of always volunteering for more projects at work or doing the bonus assignments if you're going to school that you don't really need to be doing. It could also be equating your self-worth to your achievements. You don't feel worthy of that bonus or of showing up at work each day or the relationship that you have if you don't do all of the things that you think you need to do to be successful, or if you're not achieving those things. Another impact of hyperachieving is the difficulty delegating. You know that it would be so helpful for you to delegate work, whether that be at work or, since you're busy at work, maybe hiring somebody to come clean your house once a month or twice a month, or outsourcing some of your meals and getting HelloFresh meals, or even picking up pre-made meals for yourself and your family. There's so many different ways that you can delegate that would honor your boundaries and your energy than doing it all. We're not just hyperachieving at the office, we're hyperachieving at home too. We're trying to be these super moms that have the job and do it all, then come home and do it all as well. Be very present with our family, being patient during meltdowns. And it is just exhausting us to the point where you burn out. A common thing I hear from my clients is that they are in another cycle of burnout. It's not just one cycle and they learn more about it in themselves and they overcome it. It's this cycle of burnout that keeps happening and it keeps repeating no matter what season of life they're in. Right now is a good time to point out that there are so many strengths of someone that is a hyperachiever. You are driven, you are passionate, you want to show up, and you are really good at executing and sometimes even delegating to teams, sometimes not, and that's why you're a hyperachiever. But those things are all really, really good. It's when we slip into overusing those strengths of our drive and our passion and execution that we start sabotaging our work and sabotaging our relationships. So let's tap into the hidden costs that all of that is actually having on you and your career and even your family. The biggest one that I feel most passionate about and most connected to, and that my clients do as well, is that overworking is mentally exhausting you. And especially if you're overworking as a mom at home, the hidden cost is that you're not being present with family at night. You're missing those long-winded kid stories. You're missing the splish splashes in the bathtub when they're in there. And you're just trying to get done for the day, rushing through your evenings and rushing through your day, maybe rushing through your morning routine, instead of actually enjoying being there, enjoying your presence, slowing down in those moments. Another hidden cost is that going overboard on projects or bonus assignments, even though you think it's being helpful and might even get you the raise, that is slipping into perfection. It's taking so much longer than it needs to. And really, for what? There are very specific moments where being a perfectionist is a great thing and your attention to detail is definitely needed, but not in every single day activities, every single day work assignments, unless you have a very particular job potentially. But all that does is leaving you feeling burned out and overwhelmed every single day. And you wake up hoping that today is when you feel that fulfillment or relief, or like somebody takes work off of your plate, but you never get there. And you're always left feeling that overwhelm and even overstimulation, no matter how much success or how many promotions that you get. Speaking of promotions, the career impact alone. There are missed promotion opportunities when you are hyperachieving. And sometimes that's because people in your office think that you're quote unquote too valuable in your current role. You become too valuable with what you're doing that they don't think and they don't want to promote you, because who will fill your shoes? Or you might even put that on yourself of, nobody can fill my shoes. I do so much for this company that if I were to leave, if I were to take a break or go for a different job or a different promotion, then I would be leaving them high and dry. And that's partially because of all of the work that you do. And I guarantee that there's some of that work that you don't need to be doing either at all, or that you could delegate to somebody else. Another career impact is your relationships with your colleagues. They suffer. And innovation decreases when you're always in execution mode. When you're always thinking about putting things into action, you take time and energy away from your creative brain, where you might come up with an even better solution or an even better idea. You're too focused on the outcome, and you think that spending time in this creative zone is just fluff time, right? It's not worth it to spend time there, when in reality, that could be the breakthrough moment for you or your company or even your relationships. Moving into relationships, this has an impact on you personally. I already mentioned how with my ex-husband, it was just this feeling of dread and guilt knowing he was going to ask me what I was doing on my phone. And even though I loved it, I was like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And so this hyperachieving bleeds into your family time. What that might look like if you're not checking your phone 24/7 is simply being so exhausted because you worked so hard that when you are home, you are just mentally checked out. You're physically there, but mentally escaped. This is what happens when you go to bed at night and you're like, what did I even do today? You're just living on autopilot. Or when you're cooking dinner and you're also thinking about the tasks that you didn't do today that you need to do tomorrow, or a new idea that pops up in your head that you're going to have to add to your to-do list, and you are never fully in your body, present, grounded for yourself or those that you live with. There's also the relationship strain. Your partner always seeing you on your phone, or your partner witnessing you being mentally checked out. They are impacted by this. Your kids are impacted by you physically being there, but they can sense that you're not there, right? It's that quote, like, you're there, but you're not there. Also, the persistent feeling of not enough. I can't stress this one enough. That feeling of being good enough and doing enough and being worthy enough runs so deep, especially in hyperachievers. No matter how much success or even validation that you get from outside sources, if you don't feel that deep down, you're going to continue overworking. You're going to continue burning out. I talk to a lot of women who say that they want a 4-day work week instead of 5 days so that they can be home with their kids more, or they want a more flexible schedule, as if time was the issue. But what they don't realize is that no matter how much or little you're working, if you are stuck in hyperachiever mode, on those days off, when you are home with your kids, you're still going to be hyperachieving. You're still going to be adding things to your to-do list. You're still going to be mentally checked out, even though you have more time to yourself. Ultimately, in a nutshell, peace and happiness is fleeting and short-lived. It's brief moments of celebration before just moving the bar and trying to achieve even more. Hyperachieving is getting in the way of your self-acceptance and self-love, and it's continuously conditioned on the next success. The biggest thing with hyperachievers is that they don't experience unconditional love, definitely from themselves, from self love, but then it also gets projected onto other people. They can't imagine that somebody else would accept them and love them if they aren't achieving. Because of all of this, hyperachievers lose touch with their deeper feelings, with what they want, with their deeper self, and the ability to connect with others. They're just laser focused on doing, hustle, 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 get to that next milestone, celebrate for a brief second, if they even celebrate at all, and then do it all over again. And another thing that we won't go into too much detail on, but it's that those closest to you, either at work or your family or friends, they might get pulled into this performance vortex, if you will, of the hyperachiever and become similarly lopsided in their focus on external achievement. Think about how that might impact your kids. If your kids see you doing this, they are going to think that they also need to achieve in order to be loved, that they need to achieve in order to be validated, that they need to achieve something in some capacity in order to be worthy of whatever it is that they desire. And is that what you want for your kids? I have two quick success stories from my clients about how they were able to identify their hyperachiever and work through it so that it's no longer such a tight grip on them. One of them is my client, Jess. She is a mom of two boys, and she's going to school right now to get a better job and to just expand her learning. She is a hyperachiever. I believe it's the second one in her saboteur profile. And how it shows up for her is taking on those bonus assignments in school. And I asked her why she does that. And she says that it's just in case. So, just in case she doesn't do well on a test or a different homework assignment, she really wants to maintain A's and high A pluses in her classes. So, these bonus assignments, she used to do all of them just in case, just as like a little buffer. But what she realized is that that is sacrificing presence and time and energy with her kids for perfectionism. Because those bonus assignments aren't just quick, like fill it out and submit. It requires energy and focus. It requires time to research what goes into it. And that's all time that could have been spent on cooking dinner with your kids that night. Or something Jess loves to do is freeze dance with her kids after they come home from school. So through the Self Sabotage Detox, she reconnected with why she's in school now, because now she's a mom. She's older. It's different than why she was going to school at 18, why she went to graduate school for nursing. It's completely different now. So she reconnected with her why now and reprioritized her life and realized that family is most important right now, and how that impacted her and how she was able to And because of that, she was able to see the connection, or more so the disconnect, from always trying to achieve and the stress that it provided at school. And now she's declining these bonus exercises when she knows that her family is more important. She recently had an extended stay where one of her two kids was home sick for whatever reason. And that was a time when a bonus assignment was posted, and she decided not to do it because she needed her energy to be on her kids or on herself, recharging that week. And we were all so proud of her for not picking up that bonus assignment. Another client is Laura. Laura tends to hyperachieve when people stop by her office and just put a new project on her desk, and it just kind of stacks up and piles up to the point where she doesn't want to say no, and she feels like those were given to her for a reason, and she has to execute every single project that comes to her. She was going into her office, which I believe is about 2 hours away, or maybe 1 hour, but it's a combination of driving and then train and then walking, something like that. And she was doing that at early hours. She was staying late, despite actually having the option for a flexible schedule and working from home consistently. But she thought that being physically in the office, even though that alone, that drive and commute alone was draining her, she thought that her presence was looked highly upon, that that was almost contributing to her worth as an employee at her job. And that if people didn't see her there, they would think that she wasn't working or wasn't taking her work seriously. So there's really two things there. There's the showing up, even when you could be working from home some days when it's more convenient for you, and the worth that plays into that. But then also the taking on the extra projects and feeling like your worth is attached to delivering on all of those projects that are above and beyond what you normally do. Through the Self Sabotage Detox, Laura realized that she doesn't need perfect papers or write-ups to be valued. That there are definitely times, like I mentioned earlier, where it does matter what she types up and what her diagnosis is, but not every time. That some of her write-ups don't need to be so perfectly written, and that she was really doing that stemming from a place of worth and validation. Laura is learning that she's worthy without constantly proving herself, and finding balance and trusting herself, trusting that she's working enough, that she's actually working even when she's not in the office, and that she does a good job in her role. Now, I want to share with you how you can specifically take that first step in breaking your own cycles of hyperachieving. I believe that the first step to everything is awareness. You can't fix something that you don't know specifically how it's impacting you and how it's making you feel and how it's showing up in your day. So, the one small step for you to do today, even right now, pull out the Notes app on your phone. I want you to ask yourself, when do I feel resistance? And this can mean something different for everybody. But some examples that I thought of for you based on my clients and my experience is maybe you feel resistance when your partner asks you what you're doing on your phone. Maybe it's not resistance for you, but guilt or dread. Maybe for you, it's when your boss inquires about an assignment that you're currently perfecting and you're like, I feel resistance because I want more time on this, but he or she are also asking for this. Or maybe for you, the resistance comes in when comparing yourself to other overachieving coworkers. Those coworkers at your office where you perceive them to be going above and beyond and you're comparing yourself to them. Or maybe when you work really hard on something without recognition. There's some definite stickiness around that. Or most importantly, this is a clear indicator, is when you feel burnout approaching. Become aware of your specific resistance, when it shows up, who it's with, what are the trends between all of the moments that you can identify. And then from there, you can start to focus on actually disrupting that. That is the work that we do inside the Self Sabotage Detox. Within every single one of the 10 sabotage patterns, there's a unique way to disrupt them. Just to give you a sneak peek, there is a physical pattern interruption. This is what I've been calling presence reps, and that disrupts every single saboteur. Something else that we do with the hyperachiever is the enough practice. This looks different based on how you are hyperachieving and how you're seeing it show up and that resistance show up in your life, but choosing to feel enough in certain areas and making lists. Also, setting boundaries around your work hours and even the parameters of what you do in your current role. And also celebrating small wins rather than always looking ahead to the next milestone. Celebration is so key in disrupting every single sabotage pattern, but especially the hyperachiever, because they rarely celebrate all that they do. And they don't realize that the small wins are just as important and add up to the big wins. You could celebrate the fact that you showered today. You could celebrate the fact that you made lunch when maybe you normally don't make yourself lunch or you eat fast food. You can celebrate when you submit a paper to your boss or to your teacher on time. That might not seem like something to celebrate, but not everybody submits their papers on time. And that was the requirement that you actually achieved. So celebrating that rather than thinking, well, I should have submitted it 5 days earlier. We have a full week dedicated to the hyperachiever inside the Self Sabotage Detox. It's where we go over all of the impacts that it's having on you, on your career, your relationships, even your health. We also learn the specific disruption pattern for the hyperachiever so that you can experience more balance and even more joy while doing less. And if you're a fellow entrepreneur, just know that doing more does not always mean more money, more clients. When I started resting more, guilt free, I saw my business start to grow. I saw my creativity start to grow. So it's finding that sort of proof when you back away from what you've always done and realizing that it doesn't mean that not hustling means that you're sleeping all day. And also, we find comfort in saying no. This also goes back to people pleasing and a little bit of the avoider, but saying no is something that is so powerful and a really positive emotional experience. So let's pull it all together. When you are caught in that hyperachieving cycle, you are paying some serious costs that you might not even realize. When you're constantly checking your emails after hours, you're missing those special moments with your kids that you can't get back. When you're over delivering on projects or staying late or burning yourself out, all to prove your worth when you're already worthy. Your relationships suffer because even when you're physically present, your mind is still at work. Your mind is still going about some sort of responsibility you feel that you have. Maybe it's planning the next task or worrying about the next deadline or the next school project that you need to help your kids with or packing lunch for the next day. And perhaps the most heartbreaking of it all, I think, is that drive that once energized you, that passion, now leaves you feeling drained and overwhelmed and disconnected from what truly matters and questioning yourself. But here's the beautiful possibility that opens up when you break free from these cycles. Imagine coming home and being fully present and actually hearing those long winded stories from your kids and enjoying them. Jess, my client that I mentioned earlier, one of her kids, her youngest, is in that phase where his stories just never end. They keep going. And she used to just be like, yeah, 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 or give him a task to try and distract him so that she could keep doing what she was doing or get ready for bed or whatever it might be. And just this week, she was telling me that she finally started listening and paying attention, and that it's actually not only building a better connection with her son and realizing what it is that he actually wants to tell her, but she's actually enjoying it more. She's feeling more present and enjoying those stories that used to feel so dreadful. Think about the liberating feeling of being good enough and doing enough rather than perfect work and still knowing your value. Knowing that you did enough and that you are worthy of that, not thinking about what else could have been. Envision trusting yourself to say no to extra projects because you believe that you're worthy without constant proof, and that nobody will judge you for saying no and delegating to somebody else. This isn't just about finding balance, it's about reclaiming your life, your joy, your passion, your energy, your connection to your kids and your family, so many things. And I've seen it happen, not just in my own journey, but with clients like Jess and Laura, even clients I haven't mentioned their stories like Christy or Liz and Bree, who transformed their overachieving through the self-sabotage detox. You deserve to experience this level of freedom and this level of worth and this level of love. And I would be honored to help you get there. If you can relate to this episode and you want more help breaking through your self-sabotaging patterns of hyperachieving, or maybe any of the other ones that your quiz pops up with, then I highly encourage you to check out the Self Sabotage Detox. The current round is ending and I'm starting up the second round. Our first call is on March 10th. I did have early bird discounts and perks that expired last week, but if you sign up through the podcast, those perks remain for you only. I'm not talking about this anywhere else except my podcast. And that's purely as a thank you for tuning in each week and for paying attention to your own emotions and your own desires and doing the work, even if that work so far is just listening and being inspired. Now I'm here to help you take that next step and take action towards feeling how you actually want to feel. So again, as a podcast listener, you will get a huge discount and 2 private calls to discuss your specific sabotage patterns and how we can disrupt them in your real time with what's happening in your season of life. If you're ready to stop sabotaging your relationships and your career success with overachievement and find true balance, I would love to work with you in the Self Sabotage Detox. There are 6 spots total. So if you are interested, be sure to click the link in the show notes or shoot me a message on Instagram at samantha.s.says. I would love to chat with you about any questions that you have or your hyperachieving saboteur that pops in. Even if you're not interested, but you found value in this episode, I would really love it if you could spend just 1 minute, 90 seconds maybe, rating and reviewing the podcast episode, either on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope that you were able to find some worthiness within resting this week. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Tune in on Thursdays to journal with me for a 5-minute journal prompt, and I will see you next week.